lo que dice Díaz.
Buenos días, bienvenidos a la primera emisión en vivo de Dialogs in Design, impartido por la licenciatura en Interiorismo de la Universidad de Monterrey. En esta ocasión, el tema es el diseño hedonista y para ello se ha invitado al estudio Designyougo. La firma de diseño, con base en Berlín, se fundó en el año 2009 por el arquitecto Mathis Malchow y Sebastian Kimmelin. El enfoque principal del estudio es el diseño personalizado y la alta calidad en la arquitectura, desde el primer boceto hasta el término de obra. Designyougo también se reconoce por estar orientado al usuario y su eficiente método de trabajo, ya que tanto el arquitecto Mathis Malchow y Sebastian Kimmelin han tenido la oportunidad de colaborar con la oficina londinense Foster & Partners. Le damos la bienvenida a Mathis Malchow.
Hi, Kasmi. Thanks for introducing me. So I'm joining this lecture via video. I'm not quite sure whether you can see me already. Okay, I'm live, I'm assuming. So as Kasmi just said in Spanish, we set up Designyougo 4 years ago. And before that, I worked for Foster & Partners. I heard you're studying interior design and mostly interested in interior design projects. But I think actually designing architecture or interior designs is exactly the same, because you need to put your ideas first and get them to paper. So I want to show you one project which we've completed just recently in Berlin, not in Berlin, in Germany. It's for a big car manufacturer, which I'm not going to mention here. And it's a very nice little project, and I can show you the full process from the first concept to completing it. Afterwards, I want to talk a little bit about how you can do beautiful designs without having a concept for it. So let's start with the presentation. So can you see my PowerPoint presentation now? Did that work?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay. Wait a second. So first slide is, that's me and Sebastian, how our employees see ourselves. We've got these nice pictures for everybody. We run the company, and we figured out in the past few years that drawing sections and plans is actually not a way forward to make beautiful designs. We then decided that doing visualizations from 3D models is actually the way we want to communicate about what we design. So this has a great advantage. Rather than doing the traditional approach where you do sketches and then you draw up your ideas and then in the end somebody pays for visualization, which you then do up to 3 times before you get your building or interior design. We actually redo the view until the client is happy, and then afterwards we just have to draw up what everybody likes. So whenever we get a new commission, we will start with visualization. It's not actually a concept usually what we do. But in this case, for this project, we actually got a project, just a simple sketch, just had a concept of themselves, and we weren't even sure who this was for. So it was a Berlin producer for TV shows that got into designing some sort of installation. So the concept you're seeing now is actually not a Designyougo project. But the concept failed with the client. We figured out it's a big car manufacturer in Germany. So we made a proposal ourselves, which was a big spiral ramp, which then led into us redesigning a whole pavilion, an existing pavilion, in an area where you go to pick up your car, which you see on this image. And we proposed 2 big stairs, which would transform the building into something that people would like. And these two stairs had side walls which consisted of iPhones. So you can see each of these single iPhones were programmable, and the film company we were working with at that stage then, they were actually responsible for the content and the concept of what to show on these iPhones. And we kind of designed this there. So half a year later, the client decided they don't like the concept. But then we had our foot in the door. So they asked us to come up with an image of a stair without a media installation, which would transform the building they didn't like a lot anymore. So we drew up another visualization, which just shows two simple black stairs. And that actually got us in. So when they saw this image, they said, well, this looks awesome, but can't you get rid of the bench and the counter? So we redesigned the whole thing. And this is actually still a visual, so it's only done in the computer. Yeah? After talking to a lot of people at the clients, we had to make modifications. And what you see now here is the final refined visual, which actually got the sign off for getting built. Now, once we were at that stage, we still had to design a lot of things. For example, what happens during construction? You have to build a scaffolding and site enclosure, which also needs a sign off, so it needs to be designed. We also had to provide detailed renderings of how we imagine the stair. The stair is made of steel subconstruction with natural stone slabs on it. It has LED lighting integrated. It has a Korean balustrade with timber handrails. So pretty complicated design, high cost design. So they asked us to produce mock-ups, which some contractors built for us to show that our stair actually works. They asked us to provide samples of the drywalling we were going to do. And in the end, we even built a part of the whole stair, which you can see here in the workshop. And there was also a mock-up of the curtain. And then we built a full-size mock-up of the scaffolding to enclose the whole site. And finally, we started construction. And this was just a process you saw, let's say, the past 5 months. So we started on site in July. And you can see the scaffolding, the curtain. And this is from the inside where we dismantled the old building. And here you see the 3D curvature that's going to be made up of small pieces of drywall. The stair coming in. And then we are cleaning already. So this is the final build project. Seeing the lovely stair, which leads people up to an existing media installation. And we designed this one down to the doorknob. So maybe you guys want to ask some questions for this project, and I'm happy to answer. And I can also pull out more images if you want from my drive.
¿Alguna pregunta? There is one question.
Yes.
How did you come up with the idea to cover this with a big curtain?
Well, during construction, you have to cover the site. Yeah. So in the final stage, there's no curtain. Yeah. But since the operation of the whole building is carrying on, during construction, so there's still people picking up their cars which they bought. So let's go back to this image where you can see it. You need to make sure that the construction can continue without disturbing the operations of the car manufacturer.
Oh, okay, I understand. Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. Huh? I'm gonna explain it a little bit in Spanish, your answer.
Yeah, okay.
Tuvieron que cubrir con esta cortina para poder tapar la zona de obra que se estaba haciendo, pero para que el sitio pudiera seguir funcionando. Entonces, la obra se hizo adentro de donde se ve esto. ¿Ok? Sí, exactamente. Es un showroom para carros y toda la obra que ellos hicieron es dentro de esto. Ajá. Sí, así es. Dejaron esta cortina, así es. Okay. Thank you, Matthew.
So I think this was now a pretty quick run through of how we usually design a building, but it shows on an example how you get from from your first sketch down to a building, and there's not much more to it. So we basically cut out the whole concept phase of a project. We just do a nice image. And that's what we call hedonistic design. We just do something we love, and then we show it in such a nice way that everybody agrees, and then you're allowed to build it. It's a very simple concept.
Okay.
So I don't know whether we should go into more detail on some of the images, or whether the students are interested in anything else we do.
Well, can you talk a little bit more of the process of your work in other projects?
Yeah, I mean, if there's specific questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay. ¿Alguna pregunta? ¿Alguna pregunta, chicos?
What do those stairs lead to? You said it was a media room, but a media room. Oh, yeah.
¿Vuelvo a decir?
What do those stairs lead to?
One student is asking, it's like the stairway that you apply in the design.
Yes.
Where do they lead you?
Basically, if you go back to the initial concept image with the spiral, basically this is an existing Twitter installation on the inside of the pavilion. So you see these steep stairs on the right-hand side, which lead you up, and then on the inside you can actually see a world map. So whenever somebody tweets about this car manufacturer, there's going to be a location as soon as you use a hashtag like Golf or Volkswagen or whatever. You will actually pop up on that map. And they installed this installation for a lot of money, but they figured out that with the building as it stands, nobody actually went inside because nobody understood there is an installation on the inside. And when they asked us what can we do about it, we said, well, look at your stairs. They look like backstage stairs, which you're not allowed to go into. It's like a private area which is not meant for the public. I'm pretty sure everybody can agree that these stairs are not suitable for an exhibition or event area, something like, well, designed by an architect that didn't think about what people want to use in this case. So this is actually for us something where interior design starts, where you want to draw people into certain locations rather than they have to go there, so you can do what you want as an architect.
Okay.
So the whole project is about the stair, and I think the freedom we have as designers is you can do any form of stair, but how do you make it attractive? Huh? So the first step for us was, can we do something that's special and new? and high tech, like using iPhones. But that turned out to be very expensive, and the IT part was uncontrollable. And they also wanted something that only lasts for 3 to 4 years, so they weren't prepared to spend that much money on it. When we then came up with this solution, which was a lot cheaper but still very expensive, they said, well, this is something we like, and actually we believe that people will use the stair just to find out what happens upstairs. And you can convey this message by just doing a beautiful image of it. So we were very careful, not because on the last scheme they told us it's all going to be too expensive. We only did a little amount of things, but when they saw this image, they said, well, but if you do such a nice stair, can you really keep the green bench and the turquoise counter? And then they asked us to actually redesign the whole thing. And that's where you can actually win over a client just with an image. You know? If you talk about a concept, then they will never understand what the benefit is in the end, because the people that use these stairs, they're not looking for a concept, they're looking for an invitation. Is there any more questions?
Yes, there is one question. One student is asking, it's where it says social sphere.
Yes.
If it's light or is paint.
This is, in this concept image, this is actually light. So the whole thing was meant to be a Korean enclosure, which then got a backlighting in an area which is basically thinner than the rest. So you can use tools to reduce the thickness of the Korean to be able to have the light passing through more easily.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it's actually not the one that got built in the end, yeah? But it helped us to get there. And the reason for that is, you see this beautiful bench. There's an event which happens every year for the shareholders of the company, and it takes place on the same floor. And they have a fixed layout for it. And because they plan this yearly happening already 9 months before, you can actually not construct a design that changes the conference layout, because whenever you want to get a sign off for changing it, that's too late or too early or in the middle of the planning. So they asked us to come up with a solution which actually keeps the space free. And this is also where you see the dent in the middle of the social sphere, where the curve goes back in. This helps to accommodate the yearly press conference, which also has to happen. And it's in the end going to be the place where we put a new counter, which we're currently designing. Still a secret, so cannot show it here. Do we have more questions?
Yes, there is one.
What made you choose the Korean as your material? Was it the form or the color you wanted to choose? So why did you choose Korean?
The Korean is actually a very nice material for one simple reason. It doesn't burn, so you can use it in areas where there's a lot of people, and it's easy to clean, it's durable, it doesn't burn, so you're allowed to use it, so it's not against fire regulations. And you can actually work with it like timber, so if you have a carpenter, he can actually just cut it into pieces. There's a way to heat it up and then bend it into any form. So it's also a bit like concrete. And you can use milling tools in the end to have patterns in it. So it's very versatile, but it's also very expensive. There's only a few people who can actually work with it, and there's, well, then high costs associated with it. So the black part you see here now has been constructed in drywalling in the end, which you can see nicely in one of the later images. I think this one here. So you can see that instead of Korean, we choose to have drywall. So there's several layers of small pieces of drywall, which then got plastered and sanded and plastered and sanded. And I think we have in the end like 8 or 9 layers of color coating on top. to actually get the finish to a standard we liked. And you can still see, if when you look closely, that it's not 100% perfect, but I think it's pretty good for drywall. So maybe there are more questions for the finished product.
¿Alguna pregunta más? No, I don't think there are more questions about this project. No.
Okay. Well, I think this one is a good example for what we do, and it's maybe the most high-end interior design we've done so far. There are a couple of more projects at Autostadt which are very similar, actually, in terms of how we do them. So what I wanted to talk about last in this little lecture or session is how we do design differently than maybe we were taught at school. So maybe this is something you can use in your own designs. I think if you design something, you have to put joy first. So it needs to look good, and it needs to be fun, and it needs to be something that people want to have in the end. It's basically as if you were designing an iPhone. Even if you do something that sounds responsible, like building a sustainable house, I wouldn't do it out of a feeling of guilt that, for example, you say, I have to save the environment, because you cannot do that with one single house. But building a sustainable building like we've done in Casa Lucano in Switzerland has other benefits, hedonistic benefits. For example, if you take a shower in the building in the end, you can use the shower and use it, and you know the hot water is just coming out of clean energy. So this feels good, and it's a good thing at the same time. And this leads me to the most important part. If somebody asks you to come up with a concept or explain a concept for your design, then this is actually going down the wrong way, because concepts is to rationalize something that should be fun, and design, especially interior design, in my eyes should be more adorable than explainable. The one part that we really believe in here at Designyougo is that if you don't love your own design, then nobody else will love it. So the one thing that the client expects you to show is that what you come up with is actually something you believe in. So you have to love it first for anybody else to be able to love it. And the last point is maybe also really important for what you're doing. You should be spending all your time in getting smart with the computer, like doing 3D models, doing visuals of your 3D models, and testing your design on the computer before you actually build it in the end, because it can save you a lot of gray hairs. So this is where I wanted to end my lecture, and I thank you for joining via video conference.
Thank you, Matthew, for joining us here in the University of Monterrey. Muchas gracias a todos los que estuvieron tanto en línea como presenciales en esta primera emisión en vivo de Dialogs in Design. Gracias.